Welcome to a Discover You workshop. Today we're going to talk about positive relationships. This is part 2 of a workshop that we started last month. We talked about listening, and then we also shared a blog article about empathy, which is really crucial as we head into today's topic around setting expectations. We want to have positive relationships with our young people, and we know that with listening and empathy, we can then go into conflict resolution and setting expectations with a positive mindset. As always, we have a poll to get us started today. And so I want you to consider a conflict you had recently. As you pause and just reflect, this could be a conflict you had with a young person in your life, could be a conflict you're having with coworkers or a partner. Just want you to think of a conflict you had recently. Did you avoid it altogether? Did you compete to be right? Did you compromise to meet everyone's needs? Did you accommodate the other completely? Or did you collaborate toward mutual solution? Just think of those 5 options and consider which one is your conflict management style, in particular to the conflict that you were considering that you had recently. And then I want you to pause, and as always, all of our workshops are focused on ways that we can grow as adults to support the young people in our lives. And so I want you to think about, are you experiencing conflict with young people in your life and the frequency with which that's happening? This could be your kids at home. This could be in the classroom. This could be with young people you're serving in after-school programs or volunteer experiences that you have. This could be a niece or a nephew, just young people that you have in your life. How often are you experiencing conflict with them? Is it very frequently, occasionally, rarely, very rarely, or never? Welcome to Discover You. We know that Discover You is designed to support young people to be their very best selves. We want them to embrace their future with courage, confidence, and connections. And those connections are often with adults, which is why we do our monthly workshops supporting adults that support youth. So we are focusing, of course, today on building those connections through talking about conflict resolution. Thank you for joining us. This quote from Marshall Rosenberg. Marshall Rosenberg was a civil rights activist back in the 1960s and 70s. He developed the nonviolent communication model, which we're going to talk about today. Marshall Rosenberg shared with us that we are dangerous when we are not conscious of our responsibility for how we behave, think, and feel. We have future workshops where we're really going to delve into more about the way we're responding, our self-awareness and our self-management. That's going to support the work that we're going to talk about today. But it really is something to consider about our ability to be fully aware of how we're behaving, thinking, and feeling. And we're going to talk about those things. Think of that young person in your life. Again, it could be someone at home, it could be a family member, someone in your classroom, your after-school programming, your volunteer work, but just think of that young person in your life. We always hold our intentions during these workshops toward an individual, toward a young person that we really want to see benefit from the growth that we're going to go through as adults in the things that we're going to learn today. So think about that young person in your life that you're going to consider utilizing the skills and tools that you learned today, that you're going to use those skills with them, that you're going to approach maybe setting some expectations or handling some difficulty or conflict differently with them. Get that young person in your mind. Everything that you appreciate about them, everything that you see as potential for them. And hold that intention in your mind as we go through today's workshop. As we mentioned, we were going to talk about nonviolent communication, but first we have to just kind of ground in some conflict management styles. That's why we had that poll in the very beginning, kind of asking, what's your conflict management style? And we look at this continuum, and we have a certain level of assertiveness and cooperativeness. So if we're not assertive, if we're not direct, and we're also not leaning in and cooperating with resolving the conflict, that means we're going to be avoiding. So if we're low on assertiveness and we're low on cooperativeness, then we're avoiding conflict, right? And I think a lot of us respond this way. Conflict is not something that feels good. It's not something that a lot of us enjoy handling or dealing with. And so we just avoid it. We just go the other way. We just take our bags and run, as this image is showing us. Then another way that is often how individuals handle conflict is we're still unassertive. So we're very low on being direct or asking for our needs to be met, but we're super cooperative. And this leads towards accommodating. I'll just take care of it. I'll handle it. I'll deal with it. I'll adjust. It's okay. Not a problem. And so we take on the burden of this conflict and we're very accommodating. And you can see from this image that it's not a real benefit to us. Our needs aren't getting met. We're being very accommodating. So that's the span of the cooperativeness, from uncooperative to cooperative while we're being unassertive. So we're avoiding or accommodating in that unassertive space. But what if we are assertive, right? So if we go the other direction and we increase in our assertiveness, but we're not being cooperative, then we can be competing to defeat, competing to be right. And this is another conflict management style where my right over yours, my opinion over yours, my way or the highway, all of these things that we probably see a lot of is not an effective way to handle conflict. We don't want to be in that competition. We instead want to be working together. So if we're overly assertive and not cooperative, then we're in that competing space. Then we come to this middle ground, compromising, which does start to feel good, right? There's a certain level of assertiveness and a certain level of cooperativeness. I'm getting my needs met and you're kind of getting your needs met, but we're both kind of having to give something up. But we're at least coming to the table together, putting the pieces of the puzzle together in such a way that there's going to be some sort of resolution. But there is a sense in the midst of this that it's kind of a middle ground. And we both have to give something up in order to come to a compromising solution. But when we are fully assertive, fully ourselves, fully aware, fully direct about our needs, our requests, our feelings, what we're observing, and fully cooperative, where we're coming into that space by listening and understanding, being empathetic, that's when we can move into this collaborating space. That's when we learn more about one another. We have a deeper understanding of the other. We're able to express our needs. And it moves from that compromising space into this really amazing collaborating space where maybe there's a solution generated that we didn't even consider in that compromising space. When we're fully ourselves, fully direct, but in a cooperative way. So just consider your conflict management styles as we go through and we learn the tool of nonviolent communication. Again, I shared that Marshall Rosenberg, he's the founder and director of the Center for Nonviolent Communication. He grew up in inner city Detroit, which really excites me because Discover You is based in Michigan near Detroit. And Rosenberg really saw that this conflict, this daily conflict that he was seeing in his neighborhood in the inner city Detroit could be resolved. So he became a psychologist and developed the nonviolent communication model. And there's additional training on this with the Center for Nonviolent Communication. Marshall Rosenberg utilized this model as a civil rights activist in the 1960s and utilized it as a mediation technique. When we look at the nonviolent communication model, we're first looking at empathetically listening. We talked about that last month. You can go back and listen to the recording and read the blog article about empathy. And today we're going to move into then what does it mean to honestly express? So first we have to listen, but then we can honestly express our needs, right? And so just kind of consider again that continuum we just looked at about assertiveness and cooperativeness. When we're honestly expressing, we're fully assertive and we're fully cooperative. The four components of nonviolent communication are observations, feelings, needs, and requests. When we start out with observations, We first are looking at what do we see? What is objective? Okay, they're very neutral statements. So if I were to ask you what you first notice about this particular image, you might say, I see an ear or an eye, maybe lips. Maybe you might say, I see color contrast. You might say, I see a profile. And all of those things would be true. You could say, I see a person. It's what we observe. Observations are objective facts without subjective filters. They're things that we can see, feel, and hear. They're behaviors. They're things that people have done that we could replicate. Observations are just facts. They are just information. Behaviors that we can see, feel, and hear. They are not subjective. And I say that repeatedly because very often we put an opinion or a judgment or our subjective experience of someone else's behavior on the observations. And then when we express that, it increases the conflict. So some examples of observations would be slammed the door. Instead of maybe saying, well, when you stomped away and pouted. Okay? Another observation would be knock the books off the desk. It's an action. It's something that happened. Maybe increase the volume of your voice, right, compared to yelling. Maybe if you increase the volume of your voice, that's something that's objective, it's measurable. But yelling has a certain judgment or connotation to it. Walked away when I was talking. That's an action that we can definitely identify as something that has occurred. Squinted your eyes, maybe versus glaring. Arrived home after curfew. I really like this one because an alternative to be like could be disregarded curfew or disrespected me when you disregarded curfew. Well, maybe there was disrespect, maybe there was disregard, but those are going to become argumentative points. But if I say you arrived home after curfew and curfew was midnight and you arrived home at midnight 20, you arrived home after curfew. That's something that's completely objective. I don't put my subjective opinion about why you arrived home after curfew upon my observation. Did not get a passing grade on your project. I really appreciate the way of saying this versus you failed. Our words really matter. And how we're going to talk to young people is going to be really crucial in setting those expectations and helping them meet them. So just start to consider the way that we observe their behaviors and how we qualify them and what we say to them about their behavior. Downloaded a video game before asking. It's a very objective thing. When we think about, again, setting those parameters, those expectations around video gaming, maybe if we've set those expectations ahead of time, we have the opportunity then to address it not happening when maybe those expectations are not met. And we can do it in a way that we can move towards that collaboration with our young people. This one I always leave open-ended because sometimes it's really difficult to identify a specific behavior or action when it's something that someone has said. So I always say, being able to say, when you said this, and this is an observation. The act of someone saying it is a behavior. It's upon you to then note what is the thing that they said that caused you to have a particular feeling, which we're going to learn about next. Okay? When you said you didn't like dinner, when you said you were going to go out to the basketball game and instead you went to a party with your friends. Those are behaviors. Okay? Versus when you disrespected the food I was making, or you said it was gross. I guess saying it was gross would be a behavior. But if we look at the example of going to the basketball game and then going to the party, instead of saying, well, when you lied to me, even though, yes, we could see it as a lie, if we can identify the very specific observation, when you said you were going to go to the basketball game and instead you went to the party. That's a very specific, observable, non-negotiable, very objective behavior. Okay? So observations have to be very objective. We're not putting our subjective experience, opinion, or perspective upon them, because we know feelings get involved. We're going to have a feeling about someone's behavior. We need to be able to express those feelings in an effective way without escalating the conflict. And when we put some sort of subjective opinion or perspective upon the observation because of our feeling about that observation or behavior, then we're increasing that conflict. So being able to say, I'm experiencing anger because you said you were going to the basketball game and instead you went to the party. It worries me about your safety, for example. And so being able to identify those feelings that we're having. Okay, it's really distinct from our opinions or perceptions of the situation. It's not about what someone is doing to you. It's about how we're experiencing that behavior. One thing that has helped me in expressing feelings in a way that supports conflict management is trying to drop off the ED. So instead of you worried me when you went to the basketball game, or you said you were going to the basketball game and instead you went to the party, instead I can say, I experienced worry. That has really helped. When you put the ED on the end of something, it's like you're saying they did it to you. So if you can drop off that ED off of the feelings, it can help just talk about the feeling as a feeling. I experienced worry. I experienced anger. Feelings are often a reflection of satisfied or unsatisfied needs. And that's probably a topic for another workshop as we talk about how we categorize feelings and how it revolves around needs and values. So just work on identifying the feelings that you're having and start to consider remembering that empathetic piece that we talked about in the blog article. Start to consider what are the feelings that the other might be having as well in this situation. As we then go into needs, right? Needs are really distinct from strategies or blame or assigning some sort of value or worth on something. Right? But needs being met or unmet is what causes feelings. So in the example of the basketball game to the party, like I have a need to feel like my child is safe. That's a need. I might also have a need for honesty. So as I express my nonviolent communication message, which we're going to learn here in a minute, I'm going to want to include those needs and those values. Maybe it's a value that we've already established within our household or within our classroom. Like we have a need for respect. We value respect. Respect looks like, and we give those behaviors and observations. So then we know when those needs and values are not being met. Being able to express those needs and values helps us connect with the other and helps them understand why this issue is so important to us. And it moves it away from just you did this and I feel this way. You did this thing and I feel X. Well, now we move into those needs and values, which we all know we want to have met. So being able to express those needs and values is going to be really important as we handle this conflict. And then we do move into that opportunity to request. Would you? Could you? It would help me if. How does? How would you? It's supportive when, right? We don't want to use fear or guilt or shame. Remember, going back to our conflict management styles, we don't want to move into that competitive space of having to be right or having to dominate the situation and overusing that assertiveness. We want to use that assertiveness along with cooperativeness so that we're moving towards that collaboration. And so the requests and how we make those requests is going to be really crucial. They need to be doable. The requests we ask others to do actually have to be doable, very concrete, very specific, and affirmative action, something that we could move toward instead of moving away. Okay, so next time, would you call me when your plans change? Okay. Instead of next time, don't lie to me. Okay, if I'm using the basketball to the party example. Okay. So we want them to be affirmative, things that are able to be done and moving towards a positive action, not away from a negative action. Not attached to any specific outcome. Remember, we're moving towards collaboration. Okay, we don't want to manipulate. We don't want to attach reward to any of our requests. We want to come to an understanding together because we've been very clear about the observation. We've expressed our feelings. We've considered the feelings of the other. We have identified the need and value that is not being met. And we're making a request on how to have it be met. Here's how this could look. I hear you say you don't have the report complete until next week. Okay. Very specific observation. Heard you say report not complete. I'm feeling frustration and concern. Very specific feelings. It's important to me that our team is timely on reports so the board report is complete. That's a need. Timely reports, complete reports. The request would be, would you tell me what's preventing you from completing the report and what our team might do to get it finished by 4 p.m. tomorrow? Okay, so what's in the way and what do we need to do to have it complete and timely? Okay, obviously a work example. Let's look at another one. I'm feeling irritation. Okay, the order in which you arrange the observations, the feelings, the needs, values, and requests can vary. Right, so this one is leading with a feeling. I'm feeling irritation when I see you've returned my car with an empty tank of gas. Okay, gas tank's empty. Measurable observation. It's pegged over to E. Would you fill it up by tonight? That's a request. And the need would be, I want to trust that I can get to work tomorrow. Okay, pretty simple. You can see how this can just become a normal part of how you conversate, how you interact when issues come up. Instead of moving into that competitive mode of, you need to go fill my gas tank, I got to go to work tomorrow. We can move into this type of conversation and express like, hey, I'm feeling irritation, as opposed to I'm irritated, right? I could have said, I'm feeling irritated at you because you returned my car without gas. I got to get to work tomorrow. That starts to feel like that conflict's going to escalate. Instead of, I'm feeling some irritation because I see you've returned my car with an empty tank of gas. Would you fill it up by tonight? I want to trust that I can get to work tomorrow. That feels really different. It also feels really doable. It has that sense of that empathy connected to it so that then the other can move into a space of non-reaction and instead action of, yeah, sorry I did that. I'll go take care of that right now. You know, I didn't have time to get it done on my way home from school because I wanted to get home for dinner because I know that's important to you, but I know you got to get to work tomorrow, so I'm going to go fill that up. It can be that simple. Okay. There's so much at play when we're handling different conflicts. They can be little ones, they can be big ones, they could be work issues, home issues, and how we go about handling that conflict really matters. Let's look at a couple more examples. Because sharing responsibility is important to me in our family, this one leads with the need or the value, sharing responsibility. Would you set the table while I get dinner ready? There's the request. I'm happy, feeling. Seeing what you've already done this week to help at home. You fed the dog, brought your dirty clothes to the laundry, made your bed each morning. Wow. I get the sense that this example could be maybe for a younger student, a younger child, a younger individual, right? We want to start to build these skills and abilities at an early age. so that we're developing this type of communication style right away. And so that then when things get a little bit more intense as we develop into those adolescent and teenage years, we've set the foundation for good communication. And then also with partners, we can utilize this in our relationships. I'm hearing you say you would like to go out to dinner tonight. Okay, that's the observation. I'm feeling tired and overwhelmed. Okay, so this is an honest expression of just where I'm at the end of my day. I'd rather take some downtime and rest. Very specific needs. How do you feel hearing me say this? Okay. We're really just inviting a conversation. It doesn't always have to be this conflict or disagreement. It isn't always so charged and obvious. Okay. So instead of maybe sighing heavily and being like, oh God, I just don't want to go out tonight. Be like, hey, I hear you saying you'd like to go out to dinner. I am so tired and overwhelmed. I am just exhausted from this week. Some downtime and rest would be really helpful. How do you feel about that? It's a way of having a conversation. It's actually a nonviolent communication message. So as you consider the observations, the feelings, the needs and values, and those requests that we want to make, I want you to think about which aspect of the nonviolent communication model you will work on first. Do you want to start to move into making those observations without judgment? Such an important place to begin. Maybe it's about starting to recognize those feelings in yourself, how you're maybe physiologically responding and noticing feelings, or maybe that empathetic space of understanding feelings of others. You need to take a look at what are our needs and values of our family, of our classroom, of our volunteer space, our out of school time space. And if we know what those needs and values are, how do we identify them? Are they my needs and values? What the needs and values of others? That's a whole other conversation, but maybe it's just time to start to think about, well, what's important to me? And what do I notice is important to others? It could be you want to start making requests towards that collaboration space. So think about those sentence strings that we shared earlier, the would you, could you, how would you feel if, help me understand, could we figure this out together? What would it take to, right? We're asking open questions in such a way we're going to move towards collaboration. So maybe that's what you want to start to work on. I really encourage you to pick an aspect of the nonviolent communication model to begin working on this week, this month. And we look forward to hearing how that goes for you at our next workshop. Because to practice the process of conflict resolution, we must completely abandon the goal of getting people to do what we want. Again, from Marshall Rosenberg. And it's almost startling to think of it this way. You know, we're so used to getting our needs met or behaving in such a way because we need our needs to be met. But if we're actually going to resolve conflict in an effective way, in a collaborative way, it's not about getting people to do what we want. It's about figuring out how we can accomplish things together. Thank you for joining us with Discover You, our workshops. We look forward to seeing you month upon month. Do a scan here, follow us on our social media so you're always up to date on what's coming up. Join our newsletter so you have the most up-to-date information, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.